Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. It is Thursday. You know what that means. That means we speak to the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Jonathan Twombly. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, Michael. How are you?
I'm doing great. Hey, one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, again, because we're both investors, but we play at kind of different ends of the spectrum, is a notion I have called player and spectator, right? A spectator sits in the stands, boos, chants, you know, gets drunk, whatever, but they're not on the floor, right? They're not a player. They're not doing the work. And to be clear, a player doesn't mean you have to have a deal, but it does mean you are doing the work. It means you're practicing. It means you're filling in your weaknesses. So I know the difference between a player and a spectator in residential. You play in a totally different world, hundreds of units, tens of millions of dollars. I'm curious, what does a player and a spectator look like in your world?
Well, I'm actually curious, like, what does it look like in your world?
So for a residential buyer, it's really quite simple, right? First and foremost, really the biggest difference for me between a player and a spectator is a decision. I have decided to learn my market. I've decided to figure out my buy box. I've decided to figure out, and look at my market, right? It's focus and daily discipline. Yeah. You're a spectator if you're like, I'm excited about real estate investing, but you're all over the board, right? You really haven't committed, right? So the difference, in my opinion, at least at the residential level, is you're committed, and really you're trying to get 1% better, kind of the atomic habits thing. So that's what it is for me in residential.
Well, I mean, I would say for the multifamily side, right? Like you said, I think it's a great definition. You don't have to own anything yet. You need to be in the game.
Right.
I'm sorry about these messages. Like, even turning off Messenger, so it doesn't seem to stop them. So
that's okay.
So let's see. Yeah, just distracted me. So okay. So you have to be. So I would say, to be in the game, right? It means that you are doing a number of things. One is, you're, like you said, learning your market. So you've chosen a market or two or three to focus on. You are starting to follow the deals that come up in those markets. You're underwriting the deals that look attractive to you, that are kind of seem like they might be in your strike zone, and then starting to put in offers if you feel you can get there on price, right? And that's sort of like the minimum that you need to be doing to be in the game. I mean, I guess sort of something that's going to come with that is, you're not going to see the deals if you're not starting to make relationships with brokers, right?
Right. Networking. Yep.
So you've got to be out there talking with brokers. And, it's funny, like, in my coaching program, there's a lot about this, because it's one of the things that people find more difficult, is getting commercial brokers to pay attention to you. I think this may be a misconception, but I mean, on the residential side, since like pretty much anybody is potentially buying a house for themselves, right? Brokers, if you go to an open house or you call a broker, they're going to talk with you because you're another client, right? But on the commercial side, especially now with all of the seminars and coaching programs and stuff out there, there are, people who think that their investors don't understand the market, and they're calling brokers and saying, hey, I want to see show me 100+ unit deal at an 8 cap, right? And the brokers, like, their eyes roll back in their head. So they're trying to avoid those people.
Yeah.
So there's kind of like an art to getting the brokers to take you seriously, which is totally possible even if you haven't closed deals before. You don't need to have a track record. There's a way to approach them that will make them take you seriously. But you have to learn that skill. And
the big thing for me when I was thinking about this conversation with you is, first and foremost, multifamily is it's the hot thing today. When I look at the real estate investing market, it's the hottest of the hot, right? Maybe next is Airbnb. It's kind of is next. But when I think about multifamily and all the seminars, and I'm a residential guy, and I'm seeing people talk about 100 units and like, if you don't have 1,000 units, you're a loser. I'm like, what are you talking about, right? This kind of mindset. But still, there's a lot of people that have spent money on seminars or maybe even other coaching programs, but they're still spectators because they're not committed to doing the practice, doing the work, underwriting deals. You say underwriting the deals. I bet you most people don't even know what that means, right? They're like, hey, I got the broker price opinion, or, their package. I'm good.
Yeah. I mean, it is, surprising to me the number of people who, and I've even seen this with people who are well funded,
Mhm.
who are buying deals,
Okay.
and on their first few deals, they've really made mistakes because they just assumed that what the brokers put in their package was
Gospel.
accurate, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the issue is, so for underwriting, I mean, I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but
It's okay.
if brokers are not first of all, the broker is trying to sell the deal for as much money as possible. So they're going to make the deal look as good as possible.
Mhm.
And they're not, I wouldn't say that they are lying, right? Although, I mean, I have seen a couple of brokers who not totally ethical, but for the most part, the brokers are not misrepresenting anything.
Mhm.
The issue is that your cost, they are putting these broker packages together based on the seller's finances, the seller's like structure, and the
Yeah.
seller's
Their
expenses.
taxes, their insurance. Yeah.
And those are the things that are going to change when you buy it. So the typical things that will change, like the two things that will always change, are the property taxes and the insurance that you pay, right?
Mhm.
Those expenses will always be more, right? For
Mhm.
one thing, for the insurance, because the property taxes are going to go higher because it's going to most likely going to be reassessed on sale or reassessed like within a year after sale.
Mhm.
So the seller has an assessment that's based on when they purchased the property, and they never, even though taxes are going up every year, they don't reassess them dramatically. And sometimes states have caps on how much they can reassess, right? But then on a sale, they get to reset. So you can see the taxes double or triple, right, on a property. And if you're not prepared for that and don't know how to underwrite it, you'll just assume, oh, this is great. I'm going to get this. I'm going to pay this amount of tax, and it causes you to overpay. The
Mhm.
insurance, usually what happens is insurance kind of lags behind too, because there's, most people are not keeping up to date on their insurance. They're renewing their policy every year, but they're not really having like the build cost updated and stuff like that. So they're actually underinsured.
Mhm.
So and the other thing that's often the case is if you're buying property from a large property owner, they probably have it on a policy with a whole bunch of other properties and they get really
Discounts.
good
Yep.
rate,
Yeah.
which you're not going to get.
Mhm.
So that's another thing that you have to be aware of. Then the other things that you see are very often the case that if it's a mom and pop operation, they're doing all the work themselves. So they're not charging any management fees to themselves. They don't have much labor costs because they're doing all the work themselves.
Mhm.
Or sometimes what you see is people, if they own a number of properties, they're basically kind of providing those services at the corporate level, and
Mhm.
it's wrapped up in a management fee or something.
Yeah.
It's
Sharing
not,
the cost. Yeah.
yeah. So it's not, it's going to cost you more.
Mhm.
And so if you go and you buy deals based on, these gurus are always telling you buy on actuals, buy on actuals. And what they mean by that is don't buy on the broker's pro forma, right? But they don't tell you that. So, and I made this mistake when I first started too. I bought on the actuals
Yep.
without realizing that my actuals are not the same as the seller's actuals, right?
Yeah.
So actuals is sort of like a little misleading. You have to understand what your cost structure is going to be.
Mhm.
So that's why it's really critical to understand underwriting, and it's also really critical to have on your team. You need to have the property management company lined up and have them look your overwriting over, right? Unless you have, if you're big enough to have a big team of underwriters, you don't need this. But if you're smaller, you need to have a property manager that you can at least ask, the question of, well, what is the labor going to cost on this? That's like the key thing.
Mhm.
And then, what can you operate this per door at? You
Yeah.
also need to have a mortgage broker, because the mortgage brokers are underwriting these deals too, and they're seeing hundreds of deals.
Mhm.
And so they're kind of underwriting on an average kind of cost basis. But it's great to have that as a check on you, because I mean, I love it when I underwrite and I send it to my mortgage broker to get a loan quote, and I send it to my manager, and they both come back and I look at their underwriting, and it's like, oh, okay, we're like in the same ballpark. That always makes me feel really good
Cool.
that, but you have to have those people as checks. So
Yeah.
that's what underwriting is all about.
Very cool. Okay.
As I said, like that's kind of the minimal but you need to be in the game. You need to be talking to brokers, seeing deals, underwriting them.
Yeah, you're practicing, right? Getting in the game starts with practice.
Yeah.
Right. Making a decision to do the work and practice. And underwriting is a big deal in commercial. Maybe it's certainly underwriting is a totally different game in residential. You can call it underwriting, but it's nothing even close.
However, I'm going to say that you're not, if you're only underwriting, you're not in the game, because
Tell me.
I actually knew someone once, who will remain nameless, who told me that he underwrote 5,000 deals, right? I don't think he ever made an offer, right? So it's sort of like, that's not really, that's just,
No, yeah.
That's just sort of like, that's like the spectator who keeps a scorecard.
Yeah,
right?
you're in the stands, you're in baseball. What do they call it's a
Yeah, your scorecard. You got the scorecard.
Yeah.
I keep score when I go to baseball games. It helps me stay in the game, right? But it's not, doesn't make me a player. But
you're not taking your swings, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
I get you.
Yeah, so you got to be in there at least like making offers and stuff. And if you don't get anything, it's fine. And that could be because you're extremely disciplined or very conservative or whatever. That's good. You're still
that's an okay outcome, but you got to take your shot.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to be putting in offers and having the chance that you might get an accepted offer. Right?
Awesome. So a couple of quick follow-ups here, because I want to relate it to the folks that follow my channel. And my channel, very, very residential, I talk about buy box, zip code, property type, down to an active listing of 20 to 40. That's very easy to do in residential, realtor.com, all of that. I'm guessing 100 units and above, you're probably looking at cities, because you probably don't, I'm like in any one city, even a large city like Raleigh, North Carolina, what you got, like 3 active listings or something? Are you looking at regions of the country, or how do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at like MSAs, right? Okay. But you're right. There are only going to be a handful of active listings at a time, which is what makes it so difficult right now, right? Because there's so many people who are chasing the same deals. So it's really become, everybody's trying to find off-market deals, and not because it's possible to like get bargains, just because it means like you're more likely to actually get the deal.
Yeah, you want to limit competition. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. You just want to be in a situation where you're going to expend all this time, money, and effort to pursue the deal. You want to have a good chance of getting it and not be one of 20 offers on the deal. Right.
Okay.
So that's why people are trying to get off-market deals. But I have to say, people come to me all the time and they're like, "How do you get off-market deals? Do you do mailings? Do you do, knock on doors? You use CoStar to find out who the owners are and contact them?" And the thing is, well, yeah, you can do all that stuff. But I know a lot of people who have pursued those kinds of strategies, and your hit rate is very low, very, very, and you have to be really consistent over time, and it costs money. So like, like they've hired people like analysts to just do nothing but like make cold calls. And so if you don't have the money to do that, sending out one, they're out there, there are plenty of people out there who are really happy to sell you a list for a couple $1,000s, sell you a $5,000 or $10,000 package of like mailing stuff out. And the chances of you hitting on one of those, very low, right? So if you're not doing it like every month, right, and having the same people get the letter from you every single time until you finally hit them when they're ready to sell, that it's a really low percentage play.
Yeah, it's the same thing in residential. I have a guy, I call him the #1 investor in my market. He has been doing mailers or postcards, usually postcards, sometimes a letter, but usually postcards for 7 years now. He spends over $100,000 a year hitting essentially the same people. And and as you would expect, he's now getting deals this year from cards that people saved 3 years ago. Because, most of these people that are getting cards are owners. They don't flip to sellers until some event. They age out, they get divorced, whatever, right? So
whatever.
There's an event. Yeah. So the other thing I talk about in this whole spectator versus player thing is, again, very residential. So you get a buy box, you focus, daily discipline. The other thing is you start to understand what you don't know. And you talked about mortgage broker, probably inspectors. The thing that I challenge folks for in my residential is to try to meet 2 new people a week to grow your network. Is that doable in the multifamily, like larger multifamily space?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there might not be, in your market. There might not
No,
be more than 2 commercial brokers in the whole market, right? So once you've met them, you've met them. But you want to be talking with investors, and
exactly. Investors, bankers, all the
we're
things.
foreshadowing one of our, today's
Mhm.
topics. We're going to be talking about raising money. You can be out there, and you should be out there meeting investors, or doing like the way that I've done it, is building a social media presence and building a list, right?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. But so you don't necessarily have to be out there meeting people, but you have to be growing your list of investors in some way.
Very cool. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate this conversation. Jonathan, how can people follow you?
So there's a couple of ways. One, if you would like to be part of my community where we just talk about this kind of stuff all the time, just find me on Facebook. You can join the multifamily investment community. So just search for that on Facebook, and you can join that. And if you would like to invest with me, we have a number of active things going on. If you would like to invest with me, just Google Two Bridges Asset Management and fill out the investor form, and we'll be in touch.
Folks, I recommend doing both of those things. I am a part of both things, and I appreciate it. So, Jonathan, thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Mhm.